Hello, dear. My name is Dr. Gloria Bozeman Herndon. I'm the CEO of GB Group Global, under which we have GB Energy, GB Pharma, GB Energy LED, and I have a couple of nonprofits that I work with, Healthcare for All. When it comes to my title, I'm a child of God, but also my title, I'm a queen in Cape Town, and Cape Coast and Moray. I'm Queen Isowo, and I was installed 2 years ago, and I give back to that community too as well. And I'm a citizen, a native of East St. Louis, Illinois. I grew up in East St. Louis, Illinois. I was born in St. Louis though, because back in the day, black people were not allowed to be born in hospitals except for the Catholic hospital. So a lot of black people during my time were born in St. Mary's Hospital right across the bridge. My address, I was raised in the south end of East St. Louis, 1509 South 20th Street, I will never forget that. And we had a grocery store across from Dunbar School. It was Bozeman's Confectionery. It was a life of one of 14 children. We had a great life, a very religious family, an extended family. My mother was from Mississippi, and my father was from Arkansas. And they helped to bring up to East St. Louis area, East St. Louis and Centerville, other people in their family from the South, as well as they were brought up by by their brothers and sisters. So there was that migration from the South into the Midwest. Some of our people also went to Chicago and then into Detroit, and some even up to Buffalo, New York. It was a community, and you grew. You had your responsibilities, you handled your responsibilities, and even with 14 children, we grew up with more than that, because my aunt, some of her children lived with us. Then there were other families who came and lived in our basement, and they stayed maybe 3 or 4 years, and after that, they would move into their own respective homes. People gave and they shared, and so you had to learn how to be disciplined, and you managed and compartmentalized your properties, and you didn't interfere and step over boundaries with other people. And that's something people should learn how to do now when you're dealing with people socially, politically, economically, and that was what it was like. We were all public school except for the last child, and she went to this Mary Institute private schools. At that stage, our parents had funds enough to make sure that she had that private education, but even our public school education was quite good, because we were not just educated in our schools, we were educated in our homes, we were educated in our churches, we were educated in our organizations. I was a musician too, and I played for our church. I was in Sunday school, we taught Sunday school. We were look, we stayed in church. On Sunday, we were in church from morning to night. And during the week, we were in church many, many days. And we went to Bible school, Bible study. And we, of course, went to our music classes. I was a Girl Scout, campfire girl. We were busy. That's why we didn't get into any trouble, because we were so busy. There were so many. There was my piano teacher, Mrs. Rush. And then there was Margie Olive, I'm sure you all know. And as well, there were my Girl Scout leader, Mrs. Ward. Then there were a lot of senior citizens in the community. And since we had the grocery store, people would come into the store and they would see us, they knew us. And we gave credit to people who needed things, and people were appreciative of that. And we gave back into the community. My parents made sure that we did that. So, and then of course there were my teachers, Mrs. Glenn, who I remember from the 3rd grade, and some of the other teachers that we had. And then when I was going to graduate school, there was a gentleman who took a liking to me, and I finished undergraduate school when I started graduate school when I was 19 at Johns Hopkins. And I did so well in school that he said, I told him I wanted to go into international affairs. He said, you should go to my school. His name was Bill Feeney. And I was young, and I did very well, and I passed the test to go into Johns Hopkins School for Advanced International Studies, and I went into the Master's and PhD program at 19. Finished all my work toward my PhD in 2.5 years. And then I went to work for Brookings. I worked at Brookings Institute, which is an incredible think tank, while I was in college. And I worked for the Carnegie Endowment Council of Foreign Relations. I played piano for the churches. I played piano for the Masons and the Eastern Star. I worked in the retail at Saks Fifth Avenue. So I was busy. And during all that time, after finishing school, I hadn't finished my dissertation. I had finished my master's and my PhD work, and I hadn't done my dissertation because I was so busy with getting on with my career. So I worked for the African American Institute for like 3 months. Then I went into the Foreign Agricultural Service for a year, and I wanted to go in the State Department. So I went in Foreign Agriculture, got everything, all my clearances done, so I could go into the State Department. I went into the State Department, did all my studies there, and matriculated, and then I got my assignment into Nigeria. And I had to finish my dissertation. I had a limited time to finish it. So I had a mentor called Thomas Pickering, Ambassador Pickering. And he told me, Gloria, what you need to do is go and finish your dissertation. And so I went to Zaria in the northern part of Nigeria at the Ahmadu Bello University. And there I taught economics, and I finished my dissertation. And then I went and opened up the economic department in Kaduna, which was the northern part of Nigeria. I was 26, 27. I took a chance on life. Who would have thought a girl from East St. Louis would have gotten on a plane in 1969 and flew into Cape Verde, then went into Ghana by herself, and I was doing a book, Taught Baby Option, then went into Benin by road, Togo by road, and then into Nigeria. A girl all by herself, and all I did was send my mother and father a life insurance policy. And my mother said, this child is going to die, but I came back to live again. So it was, and it's all been good because I've lost a lot, but I've gotten a lot. And I've gained a lot of experience that I can glean and help so many people with. And I have impacted a lot of lives. I went out and I had an incredible career, and I made quite a bit of money. Most of the money I made initially was when my husband and I had this borehole drilling company in Nigeria. And we represented Ingersoll Rand and Jacuzzi Pumps and Johnson Control. So we were doing the boreholes. A lot of places people didn't have water. So we would bore the boreholes and we would see how the community would change from the boreholes. So we had about 1,000 employees. We had like 4 big drill rigs, and we were boring, and those boreholes would create a lot of cash flow back then. We had contracts with Coca-Cola. We would do all the water for Coca-Cola, for Delta Steel, so many, and for all the military. So we had a lot of big contracts. And then I said, Brent, we need to bring some money back into the U.S. So I said, one of the places we're going to do it, I said, now my husband was born on a Choctaw reservation in Broken Bow, Oklahoma. And during that time, really, the Native Americans started growing in terms of the casinos and the impact, okay? So he didn't have to bring much money to where he was. But then he had lived also after that in Los Angeles. So he was the head of the Chamber of Commerce, Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce, when Tom Bradley was the mayor. And his person who was under him was a gentleman called Comer Cottrell. Comer Cottrell was the president of Proline Products. So my husband had been an entrepreneur. He was also the head of Sears. It was Sears and Roebuck back then. He was the top black person in Sears back then. So we decided to do that business in Africa. And we made a lot. So we brought the money back into the U.S. And we decided to put a lot into real estate. For me, it was difficult because we had too much humanity in our approach. We went and bought all this land down in Shreveport, Louisiana, to change that community. We bought all this land in East St. Louis to help change that community. We bought land up in Peoria, Illinois, to help change and modify that community. We bought property in South St. Louis to help change that community. But you know, when you buy property, it's worse than a child, because at 18, the child leaves you. You're going to be paying taxes on that property the rest of his life, forever. And sometimes it appreciates, but just remember also, it requires a lot of maintenance. It was like a labor of love we were giving back into the community. But I've done a whole lot of other things that I really feel good about, and particularly helping the girl child with the High Tea Society, George Blanda Foundation, and then giving back to our historically black colleges and universities. I'm the chair of the corporate board now, and I have been for many years, and I've made sure I put together a program called the NAFIO, which is the National Association for Equal Opportunity in Higher Education, the NAFIO Student Loan Program, where we put together a pool of money where all these kids who are getting these student loans could take, at the end of their schooling, we had enough put aside for them that they could pay their first 6 months to return their money for the loans, and some up to a year, and that way they wouldn't default on their loans, and we taught them how to manage their credit and all that kind of stuff. So, and then we had the NAFIO Student Insurance Program, which I was the organizer of. And now what we did with that program, we did a lot of preventive care, we did a lot of wellness care, we did a lot of holistic care, and then we would go into those cafeterias and make them be accountable for what they were feeding our children. And then we would also make sure that kids would understand. You know, I'm a proponent of not putting all that unnatural stuff in your hair. What do they call that stuff where the straightener, the perms? Yeah, and now you see people are dying from uterine cancer from those perms. So, and I think what God gives you is for you. God did not mean for me to be a skinny, a small-lipped, small-foot woman. Now I'm a big-foot woman with big lips and large body, and now I'm in, you know, back in the day I wasn't in vogue, but everybody wants my lips now, baby. You know what, I believe first of all, you have to have a moral compass. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Do not hurt. I see these kids now bullying each other. I see people who are taking the short stick, the short way out of things. You have to practice. This is why I've done well on the piano. I practice. I read. And you got to focus on things that are important. And then as you come through this life, you have to help somebody. Helping people helps you, you know. Some people don't have it as easy as you have, and they have different kind of constraints. I've had a lot of my friends who've died and who have suffered, and I've been there with them. And in fact, I just had a sister to die, and I was there with her, and she told me at the end of her life, she said, "Baby, I love you. I'm not dying, I'm just fading away." And she just faded away. Yeah, well, you know, when I was in college, I was in the Black Student Union, and you know, that was the time when, you know, it was all about black pride, and it was all about Africa, and we saw the persecutions of so many people. And I was a dear friend of Mamie Till, and as part of my activism, especially in living in Nigeria, and about Africanism and Pan-Africanism, I was all about that, and all about the atrocities that have been committed upon so many people all over the world. And I've always been a drum major for the underserved, and I worked really hard in the prisons to make sure people who they take their rights from them and incarcerate you, and you have no rights, you have no, they absolutely use us, as well as people in the military who they do the very same thing with. But I've always been a drum major for the underserved. So, yeah. You know what, I don't talk to monkeys in trees, okay? Look, if you're ignorant, don't come this way. I had finished Johns Hopkins, and I was one of the best in my class. In fact, I was president of my class. And I went into a job at Department of Agriculture. And this white woman came up to me and says, "Now, because, you know, of where your background is, you're going to have to take remedial English." I said, "Excuse me. Now, because of what your background is, I'm not going to take offense to that, because obviously you're ignorant. If I could be the best in my class at Johns Hopkins, could be a research assistant in a think tank, and again could be in my church supporting and providing the community service, certainly I do not need to take remedial English. What I do need to do is come and help and train and be a therapist for you people who don't understand where I come from. So I always knew myself. I was always comfortable in myself. You know what? Some of the most incredible people in the world come from East St. Louis and still are in East St. Louis. And in a way, that city was doomed by external people too. Why would you have a city that doesn't benefit from its own tax structure? You pay for the money for the taxes in Belleville. Why do you have a city that you have one of the worst chemical plants in the world right next door to it, and people are dying from cancer because they are ingesting these poisons? Why do you have a city that, although you have the most gifted people in the world, they're stymied by bad school systems and people who really don't care about them? Okay, but look at the positive part. We had the most beautiful churches, and I had mothers all over the church. And, I love the fact that they were equal opportunity abusers. They used to beat all of us. And if one person did something, my brother used to take these little plastic lizards and things and throw them into the motherboard, and all of the kids would get a beating. So they wanted to make sure that if you didn't get it because you did it, you get it because he did it, and they're going to share the wealth, whether it was a beating or not. But also, there was so much teaching. You were taught. And then let me tell you something. You got a lot of exercise. Because back in the day when I came up, I think I walked at least 20 miles a day. Not quite 20, but we didn't have a car. We had cars, but the cars were only for grown people. So you got 14 kids, you ain't getting in no car. You got to walk. And we lived in South End, so we used to walk across where that railroad, what's the name of the railroad track? The railroad track, to get to our church, which was in Centerville, which they used to call Fireworks Station. So we would take a stick, because that land where the railroad was always the worst land, and there used to be quicksand over there. So we would take the stick, and we would never go by ourselves, because if you got stuck in the quicksand, you ain't coming out. So things like that, you never thought, people would never think that kind of stuff happened. And but that was the kind of thing, that was the Wild Wild West for us. That was our Wild Wild West. I hope for East St. Louis that it becomes a more cosmopolitan, and I love the things that you all are doing in terms of that you have are looking at having a global seat, and that you're teaching children how to become entrepreneurs. You're not going to make money, or you're not going to contribute if you don't do something on your own. And someone tell you, and don't be afraid of being an entrepreneur. I have made so much money, and I have lost so much money. But my husband said it right. The more money you make, it may feel good, but the best love you make is when you're broke. Although I told him I don't mind. I think I'd rather have some money than make some love and be broke. Okay, but anyway, it's all right. So I said, yeah, so this is why all these people having these kids are broke. They because they get love because they're broke. But anyway, it's just been great experiences, and it's been a great opportunity. And now I'm transitioning to my Neverland, because I was told, my husband told me, he first went to hell when he left here, and the devil got mad at him, and he won the lottery and went to heaven. He said, yeah, I got to go to heaven because my wife is coming. So I got to be here. So at nighttime, he sometimes say, Gloria, you better hurry up because I'm going back to hell. Ain't no fun up here in heaven. Well, let me just tell you one thing. Don't ever be afraid of taking a chance. When my husband and I bought all this land in D.C., man, black woman, they tried so much. And this man's big old tall, and here I am. And everything we tried, they put a stumbling block in our way. We had, I was on the board of the bank that we got a little bit of money from. The bank went under, and the other people came in and said, okay, give us your money, give us the land, okay. everything they could to do to break up our marriage, but it didn't work. And then we stood steadfast. Okay, one challenge goes and another one comes. But you know what? You just stand. Don't worry about it. You know, when we lost all that money in Nigeria during that coup, we lost some money. Some people were jumping out of the windows and all. I'm not jumping out of a window because of a house and a piece of jewelry. No. I'm going to get right back up and I'm going to make more. And if you just have faith in God and a love from your person, with the person you're with and the people that you're with, and you help, your currency is going to be helping people. You know, I have made so many people rich, and I've helped so many people with their education. I've always told them, get your education, and then you can just build on that, okay? And then also be compassionate. You know, I was telling you about this gentleman, Tommy Dortch. He died 2 days ago. Pancreatic cancer, just as Dr. Calvin Butts. You know, the stuff, people, you're not going to be here forever. But while you're here, be charitable, be loving, be understanding, and God will take care of you. One thing you got to have is good governance. You got to have people who are not about themselves in government. You got to have people who are about the community in government. Then you got to have a strategy. You just can't be haphazard. This thing, this place, that place. No. Come up with a plan of action. Give yourself a time to do this, that, and this and that. You know, you have to be organized, okay? And then you have to glean what is needed from other people, from people. And train. You got to train the young people. And then you got to give young people a chance. You can't be controlling everything. You know, like right now, the president of Cameroon is 90 years old. The man was just here for the conference, and I don't care what anybody said. They told the man to get up and speak, and he said, "Where am I? Who am I going to speak to? Boy, you got Alzheimer's. You don't know where you are. You know, step out and let somebody else come in. You know what I mean? When I was young, I could dance. Okay, really. I used to dance even with Catherine Dunham. But you know what? I'm old. I ain't fooling nobody. These knees do not work like they used to. I got neuropathy. My feet hurt, and everything else. And so, look, there's a season for everything. This is a season for me to mentor, to help, to encourage, and to let the other young people go and do what is for them to do. And on top of that, I wish I could tell this to my granddaughter, my great-grandson's mother. And if she sees this, I want her to know, no, you're not bringing that little 3-year-old boy here for me to take care of, although I love you to death.